was a toddler, I got like a little 4 foot by 2 foot table. Obviously playing him as a kid on the little table and getting to the point where I was starting to beat him, he thought, and a little Fiat 126 Biz, a little noddy car, I remember it blowing all over the course road once, but you used to give us lifts there and back. School's finished, you haven't got that obligation anymore, what are you going to do? How much further can you keep doing it without getting anywhere? I'm just a working man now. I'm not a snooker player. I'd love you to come down and play us in a few frames. You can stay over and, you know, like delete. The cue went in the bin. It literally went in the case, through the slot, in the bin, just sat there in the bin, and I walked away.
So today we are joined with Gary Wilson, professional snooker player. How are you, Gary?
I'm good, mate. I'm absolutely spot on. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
To be fair, mate, it's something I've probably wanted to do for a while now. I know I had you on the podcast years ago. Do you remember that?
Yes, yeah, it was good.
Budget setup, like.
Yeah, a little bit less budget than this. This is brilliant. This is like being a film star. This.
But to be fair, we're in your club, so thank you for welcoming us in, mate. With your journey to snooker, obviously, people, where are you now in the world?
So officially on the rankings now, after the last tournament, I think I'm 16th. So I'm right on that border of the top 16. Obviously, with the World Championships coming up, it's a case of just trying to stay in there now for the end of the season, yeah.
So a lot of people who watch you on the telly and have seen you kicking around playing snooker, myself, I'm a fan of the sport, but I think it looks a lot easier than what it is when you're actually on that table. What was your journey like to this sport? Because it's not something that a lot of young people, other than people who are now snooker players, the majority of young lads when they're first growing up, it's not snooker that they're going to, it's normally football or something like that. Why snooker for you, Gary?
Yeah, I think it's, as you say, it's one of them you kind of just get put into. I did anyway. A lot of the stories you hear from professionals how they got into it are all pretty similar. They've generally getting a little table for Christmas in the house, and it was the same for me. I mean, I was a toddler. I got like a little 4 foot by 2 foot table, and I'm talking like 2-3 year old. And yeah, I mean, I think the story went that my mum and dad seen us like going up to the TV and putting my hands on the TV sort of when the snooker was on, and just I don't even know how you would even say that's he loves snooker from that. He's like 2 year old, he loves it. But yeah, they decided to get us a little table anyway, and I just started playing on it, and probably still even too young to even say whether I liked it or not, but you know, a couple of years later they could see he's got a bit of potential. Yeah, like maybe 4 or 5 year old, I was playing on the table and I was starting to cue properly and everything, and I just loved it. I mean, I would never have got into it or loved it if I didn't get that little table. I probably would never have even known what it was. But yeah, you'll hear the same story from a lot of pros. It's a little table, get into it as you're youngin', and then can't wait until you get to the snooker club proper and play on a big table. And I used to watch it on the TV, obviously, as I had that small table and playing on it as a kid. I used to know which tournaments were on, especially on the BBC. You know, it would be on telly and I'd watch them and start to get an idea of who was the best. Like Stephen Hendry at the time was for me, and quite quickly started thinking, you know, I want to be like that. I want to be like Stephen Hendry. He wins everything. He's so good, and I just wanted to be great at.
See, it's mad because when I was young, I also had a table, about the same age. To be fair, I was allowed a shit. I loved it. I still do. Pool and snooker. But with you, when you said about potential and stuff and you were cueing properly, what kind of things do parents look for to know? And was your mum and dad or any siblings that you might have had, did anyone look at you and say, like, how did they identify you had potential? Because if they're not from a potential snooker background, how do they know? Do you know what I mean?
It was my dad. I mean, my mum would be the first to admit she would have been clueless. No idea I'd had any potential, really. But my dad, although not from like a snooker background, he played quite a bit of pool. So he used to play on the pool teams and stuff like that. He generally could cue properly, and, you know, you make 20, 30 breaks and stuff at snooker. So he knew how to play, and he could pick up from me straight away. As I say, probably when I was about 4, 5, 6 year old, he picked up that I could get the bridge hand right straight away. I was cueing with my elbow up. You know, everything was in the right place and doing the right things quite quickly. Yeah. And then obviously playing him as a kid on the little table and getting to the point where I was starting to beat him, he thought, hang on a minute, this shouldn't be happening. What's going on here?
What age were you at this point?
I'm guessing, I mean, if you asked him, he'd probably say about 6 year old maybe. I was probably starting to beat him on the small table. And then...
So you're 6 year old and you're beating someone who's getting 20, 30 breaks?
Capable of 20, 30s on a full size table. My dad, so I mean, I think his highest break was maybe 40 odd, 50, something like that. But so he could obviously see the potential. As I say, my mum would have had no idea. Sister wouldn't have had any idea really, but my dad could see that there was something there. And obviously he knew how much I was then watching it when the tournament, like the World Championships, the UK was on BBC, the Masters. And you could just see I really loved it, and you could see I had some potential. So I was asking from probably around that age, sort of 5, 6, 7 years, when can I play on the proper tables? And it wasn't until I was 8 years old where he was like, right, he's beating us in the house. Like,
he needs to flap his wings.
Yeah, we need to go down the club and see if this is worth even doing or he's any good. And that's how it progressed. I came down to the club it was in Wallsend. It was called Super Snooker. It was only a couple of miles away from mine. And that was where I first started playing. And he seen quite quickly that I was making like 20, 30 breaks quite quickly. Like,
without practice, really? Without
even really going, with just sort of every opportunity I had from then, I wanted to go down and play, and I was making breaks quite quickly. And that was then, of course, how I met the great Stan Chambers, who sort of taught us everything from a young age.
Do you think at that age you would have, like, how good was the potential though? Because do you think had that club not been 2 or 3 miles, been 20, 30 miles, do you think you still would have made that journey?
You'd have to ask me dad that, I guess. But
for you personally, were you like excited? I want to. I'd
have went 100 miles every day to play. I absolutely loved it, and the only half decision I had was, I mean, I wasn't a great footballer at school, but I played football on the school teams and stuff, and I enjoyed it. And the only half decision I had was, I remember one car journey. I think it was in the summer, going down to Wallsend Boys Club, and sort of just playing on the school teams and stuff like that, playing 5-a-side. And I remember sort of having that conversation with my dad in the car, in the Sierra. He had a Ford Sierra. And just saying, like, look, son, you're going to have to probably decide. And this was when I was about 9 years old. You're going to have to decide whether you want to keep coming to the football, doing the 5-a-side, playing on the team after school, or whether you don't want to play for the team after school and you come straight home and we'll go to the club for a couple of hours. You're going to have to kind of start picking one or the other. And it didn't take long. I had a bit of a decision, but it didn't take long for us to decide, well, look, I love snooker. I've loved it for a good few years now. It's what I knew deep down, it's what I wanted to do. And from there, it was just practice all the time, basically. Still played on the school team when I could here and there, but not for many more years after. It was
so how were you as a young lad, Gary, in terms of from a social aspect? Because obviously you've got football, it's very social, loud, rah-rah, all that type of banter in the changing rooms and stuff. You've got snooker, very introvert, very sort of in a club, hidden away. It's quite underground. I know that you can have nice atmospheres and stuff, but for a young lad, I can't imagine that being the most social. Yeah. When a lot of people are out on the field or out gone drinking, all them things that you do as a 14, 15-year-old lad.
I was going to say, not at 9-year-old.
But when you got a bit older, how did you sort of find that? What were you like as a young'un?
I was probably one of them quite quiet ones. I wouldn't say I was like one of the popular lads at school or anything like that. I was a bit under the radar. I was quite quiet. Not like, I wouldn't say I was unpopular, but and dead quiet and shy or anything. I just wasn't one of the popular guys in school. So for me, it was like, it was just all I wanted to do. It was like school was just a thing that got in the way from very early, as I say, from 9-year-old really, when I started making 100 breaks and knowing that I needed to like play this game properly. School was just a hindrance. I just went because I had to. I had many conversations with my mum, and she would constantly say, look, get your GCSEs. I was like, I've got to be 15 before I get all them. Like, I've got junior tournaments, I've got to play for England, and I've got this, that, and the other. And no, you're getting your GCSEs, and then after that, we'll see. You can do what you want then. But yeah, I sort of just treated it as something I had to do, and something really where, well, I mean, I made sacrifices. Like, as you say, I mean, not for me, but 14, 15-year-olds going out with their mates after school, going drinking in the park or whatever. I didn't do any of that. I wasn't really bothered about any of that. But there was things I missed out on a bit later than that, sort of 16, 17, when you leave school and people are starting to go out drinking and stuff. There was times when I had to obviously sacrifice all that and just, well, during school, as soon as school was finished, I'd run home sometimes. So
did you ever do that though? Did you ever take part in,
every now and again, but not to the extent obviously everybody else would have. I was always dedicated, so as I say, there was times I'd run home from school. You can ask my best mates, like literally run home from school when they were all walking and going wherever and doing whatever. I'd be running home, take us like 20 minutes to get home. My dad would be ready for us, straight to the club, 2-3 hours practice, back home, and do the same again the next day, and I'd do that for quite a few days, as long as he could take us.
Something you've really got to love, like, in it when you.
It's quite sad, really, how much I loved it.
Not really though, because look where it's taking you now. But up until that point, so when you obviously met Stan, and you were recognised, obviously as a young lad and stuff. What was kind of the trajectory then? Like, was it a case of right, you win a lot of tournaments? Was it a case of where were you as well, sort of mentally? Were you like thinking, I want to go all the way with this, or is this something I'm just loving, I'm good at?
Yeah, I wanted to go all the way from a very early age.
Were you told that as well?
Yeah, because Stan was like, I'd kind of class him as like a man manager in football. He was an unbelievable man manager. Like he would be able to just build your confidence so much. You didn't have to necessarily be the greatest player in the world, but he would tell you everything you needed to hear to make you think you were.
Yeah,
and literally from, well, like that story before, when I first came in the club at 8 years old, I think he was actually behind the bar helping out at the time, because that was his club as well. That's where he'd done the Saturday morning coaching sessions for like 2 or 3 hours. So that's how I met him. I don't know if it was the first time, I can't remember, but my dad will know better. First couple of times anyway from going in there was seeing Stan behind the bar, and he clocked us obviously playing, and he could see I had a bit of potential, and he said to me, Dad, like, you should get Gary to come along the Saturday mornings. We'll do like 2 or 3 hours coaching every week, and there's a big group of young'uns come along, and I'll coach them and stuff, and help them out. So obviously I was like dead keen. I was like, I want to come every Saturday, and did that, and that's how it kind of started. Just he picked out quite quickly that I was, out of anyone, I had the most potential, and he just wanted to help us as much as he could. Any free time he had for us to coach as he would. I mean, we're going to times like I had practice in Wallsend all the time, but then when I was about 11 years old, I used to have to go to Jarrow to get free. I started getting free practice over there, and that actually came from playing in a tournament in Gateshead where all pros and amateurs can play. And I was starting to win the odd matches and stuff. And there was other players then around the area picking up on how good I was at such a young age.
So your name was just getting...
Yeah, obviously from a very... I mean, I'd been on Big Break at 9-year-old, playing in the junior version of that. And all Stan really pushing things, speaking to the BBC, saying, look, I've got a 9-year-old here who's made 100 break, get him on this junior show.
Did you get recognised by professionals as well? So I know you're on Big Break in these type of things, but was there any of the players who you looked up to, like the Stephen Hendrys, like any of these lads, were they ever saying, that Gary Wilson's, or was your name not amplified that loud at that point?
Not at that point, I would say. I mean, I was 9 years old, still a bit too young. I mean, people would obviously notice and go, he's making 100 break, a 9-year-old. That's brilliant, that. But you're not really doing anything. It's too young, I'd been on Big Break, but I hadn't really done anything else other than I'd been to the Crucible and been interviewed by David Vine and had a bit go on the practice tables. But I was quickly...
Still mad though.
I was quickly getting my name about, and it was more local. It was more like when I was going to these pro-ams in, as I say, like Sir Gateshead, I was starting to win games against players who were like county players or whatever like that. And I'm only 9-year-old, And obviously in them pro-ams, there's the odd pro from the area playing in them as well. Yeah. So everybody's picking up on how decent you are. And it was because of going there that there was a couple of guys who just owned a club in Jarrow, and they said, why don't we give you some free practice and you can come to our club in Jarrow? And that's when Stan was like, this is great. And he lives in Howden. And I remember times, man, this is how dedicated he was for us. There's times where we would walk, like we couldn't get a lift or anything. My mum would be at work and my dad and whatever. I'd actually get to Stan's and we'd walk all the way from his down to the pedestrian tunnel, walk through the tunnel, up the escalators.
I went there a few weeks ago, and that's a long tunnel.
But in my Stan at the time, I mean, he was still he must have been about 60-odd year old. He wasn't like a young bloke, but he walked. He'd walk all the way with us, get us there, and either stay there with us for a few hours or, somehow get a lift back and I'd get picked up by my mum or dad or whatever. But he'd put in that time for us, and walk back and forwards with us just to have a few hours in the club with us, and
I think
so dedicated.
That's made all the difference when you get them people who are like that. Like, do you know what I mean? Because you hear that quite a lot, like where someone will sort of put a bit more time into that kid, or they see something that other people don't, and that contributes massively to where they end up getting. Mm-hmm. So if we fast forward a bit, Gary, sort of from them years, you obviously winning tournaments and things like that. You've been on, you've had a bit of TV, been interviewed, all that type of stuff. When does things start to get really serious for you with snooker?
13, 14-year-old, I would say, like really serious, where I would say around 13, 14 was the time I was starting to play it, basically pro standard. Like, not all the time, obviously. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd have been doing a lot better a lot sooner. But there was spells playing in junior tournaments where I was you know, like bossing players, like making frame-winning breaks nearly every visit and playing like a proper player. Mm-hmm. And I knew then myself, look, I'm starting to get to the stage now where if I keep this up, there's no reason why I can't turn pro quite quickly.
What was your social circle like then? Because I can't imagine all your friends will have been playing snooker. So what was everyone like? Like, oh, what's Gary up to? He's in the club again. Like, how was it? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I had me group of friends that I went to school with, and it was talked about that. Obviously, you're a good snooker player, but how well do you think you're going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to be pro. Like, oh yeah. I think so, yeah, but this is why every time after school you don't see us. I'm at tournaments and stuff, you know, and as I say, they're doing other things and I'm practicing, and it wasn't easy. Like I didn't miss out on loads as at school or after school and stuff, but I missed out on enough to think this better be worth it, and it kind of made us more dedicated. I thought if I'm going to miss out on things with all my mates, I'm going to try even harder. I think I tried so hard when I was young to be pro. It almost hindered us a little bit in later years where I was trying too hard, but that's a different story, and it led on to like, you know, turning pro and then dropping off again. But I think I was actually trying so hard it hindered us a little bit.
Bloody hell. So support from your family at this point, were they still pushing you as hard as well when you were 9-year-old, when you started getting a bit older and stuff?
Yeah. I mean,
was it more encouragement from them? Because I imagine that'll put a bit of pressure on you as well. Like, fucking hell, like my mum and dad think I'm going to make it now, and my friends have kind of sacrificed all this. I've got to make it happen.
Yeah.
Did you feel that pressure?
Me dad, more than anything, was the one who believed I could definitely do something. And not to sure my mum did. My mum and my sister were probably a bit more like, oh, he's good at it, but, you know, you can't guarantee anything.
Like, get a job.
Aye. Just not like not backing us, but just being sensible, really sensible about it all. And I got that, but it was my dad really who pushed and says, I remember them having conversations, you know, between my mum and dad saying like, my dad's going, no, look, he's gonna do well. He's going to be a pro. Like, my mum's like, but you can't guarantee that, George. Like, he's got to get his GCSEs. He's got to do this. He's got to do that. And yeah, I think it was a bit of a balance there where I kind of believed I knew what I was capable of. My dad did. But
what age were you at this time?
This is all sort of probably around 13, 14, 15, you know, where you're getting to that point where school's nearly done and right, what you're going to do after. And that was where I said to my mum as well, I'll get my GCSEs, but I'm leaving school. I'm not going to sixth form. I says, as soon as I'm finished school, I'm going to the club every day for like 8-10 hours a day.
And is that what you did?
Yeah, and more when you said about the pressure before, probably more so in myself to say, right, look, this is it now. School's finished. You haven't got that obligation anymore. What are you going to do? I'm not going to get a job. I'm going to play snooker. I'm going to play 10 hours a day.
A point?
Yeah, to me, yeah. I think deep down, I actually tried to prove a point to me mum more than anybody else that I'm capable of doing this.
Like, don't doubt us.
Don't doubt us. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be there every day because I love it. It's not because I think I'm good enough. I love it. I'm going to be going every day as much as I can. And obviously, there's periods where you don't. Yeah. You're a kid still, and you'll have times in the summer holidays when, you know,
might drop off.
I mean, I spent a couple of weeks just watching Friends. I remember my sister had videos of Friends in the cupboard, and I came across them, and she had all the series. Sort of.
I wonder how much doubt you might then when you say you're watching Friends.
Yeah, well, this is it. Every now and again, they'd be like, "Do you not think you should be going to the snooker club?" I'll go tomorrow.
I suppose that's nice though, isn't it? When they're saying you should be in the club, not
definitely
get a job. Do you want to get a paper round or whatever?
Well, a bit of both. I mean, that was when I was more like 17, 18. Like, you're gonna have to get a job kind of thing. But I remember sort of 15, 16. Yeah, like having the odd time where it's like you've got to give yourself a break. Like, as much as I wanted to do it, if it was 10 hours every day, you've got to give yourself a break every now and again. And I think that's all it was for me. I'd have a bit of a break and then I'd go back to it, you know, and always dedicated though, and always trying my best.
I know that a lot of people in different sports, but in snooker as well, tell us if I'm wrong, but is it a sport where you need a bit of money to back you? Now, the reason I say that is because who can really afford to be in a club for 10 hours a day, every day, without a job when they're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, even up to 30s, people are still trying to make it. So, and beyond, I suppose, like, did you get financial support through them years? Or was it a case of, look, like, I'm just going to be skint in practice?
Basically, all that comes down to my mum and dad again. They helped me with everything. Luckily, I mean, you know, all these hours in the club, I got free time. That was the whole
Jarrow.
thing. Yeah, since the Super Snooker days, to be honest, since I was 9 years old, really, they give us 2 hours free practice per day. Mm-hmm. So at the time, that was kind of enough to get us going. And then, as I say, from Jarrow, 11-year-old, free time whenever I wanted. So I'd go as much as I could. My mum would drive us there in a little Fiat 126 Biz, a little noddy car. I remember it blowing all over the course road once, but she used to give us lifts there and back. Yeah, and Gateshead then from 12-year-old free time again. So all this is based on free practice. So I didn't really have to spend anything when I was there. It was just a case of putting as many hours in as I could. But the costs come when you're playing in all the junior tournaments and you're having to travel around the country and get your name about and win these competitions. We used to go to Leeds and Carlisle, Leicester.
Did you get support with that?
Just me mum and dad. They were skint. Absolutely skint, so a lot of credit goes to them. That they would, any money they had, they would try to put to me to be able to get to where I needed to go to play it. Yeah, so obviously I'm massively appreciative of that, and that's kind of what you have to do.
Because I think there's a lot of parents who would get a job. Like it's 1 in a million to make it, so just get a job.
Yeah. Well, that was coming because I was 16. 17 and then
that's what I was just about to say. Yeah. Was it getting to the point where you think, Gary, do you know what, like
well, I wanted to be pro. I wanted to be pro at 16. That was the age that you at the time was the minimum you could turn pro. And I'm thinking, obviously, when I leave school, put all the effort in I can and hopefully get. There was a few avenues to turn pro. One of them being like a junior playoffs thing that they did in Pontins in Prestatyn, and I remember losing that to Jimmy Robertson, who's obviously one of the top pros now. And he got on, I think. So he turned pro at around 15, 16, and I didn't. And then it took me a year or two. I didn't turn pro until I was 18, but it was just getting to the point then where it was like, away, Gary, like,
and just for the people who are listening, Gary, or watching, to turn pro, what did you actually have to do? Is it just win a tournament to get on the tour? Like, how does it work at 16?
So there's various avenues. At 16, it was mainly the junior circuit, so I can't actually really remember what it was at the time, but as I say, there was a thing called the junior playoffs.
Right, okay.
I can't even remember how I got in that. Maybe it was you hold like national junior tournaments, so there was like the national under 15s, national under 18s.
And does it work on ranking points, like that kind of system?
No, it's just like a knockout tournament. So right, okay. You'll play like the preliminary rounds in your area. So right, in the northeast, it might have been in Gateshead, for instance. If you qualified from that, you'd go to like maybe somewhere in Leeds or Leicester or something to play the next rounds, and then you'd whittle it down to the final. And obviously, if you won the final, you were the national under 15 champion or the national under 18 champion, and that would then get you into the playoffs where you'd play the juniors from the other countries as well, like Wales and Ireland and Scotland and all that. And we had something similar to that, I think, when I was 15, 16.
Where were you smashing them at that age as well?
I was one of the better ones. So if I was playing in junior tournaments, I would say I was one of the sort of top 3 or 4 like juniors in the country. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I was winning a lot of junior tournaments, but there was some I couldn't get to. You know, living up here, there was a lot of tournaments down south that because of money and time and stuff I couldn't get to. But the ones that I could, I made the most of and tried to win as best I can. And yeah, as I say, I lost in that playoffs where Jimmy Robertson got on and 1 or 2 others, maybe Matt Selt, I can't remember. I think he was around my age and he was on that at the time. And yeah, because of missing out on that, I was sort of 16, 17, 18 and still not pro. So when I was 18 and I eventually did turn pro, it was a big relief because that was like crunch time really of like, right, we're going to have to change direction and start getting a proper job, you know.
And how did you feel then? Did you feel like, right, 18-year-old, point proven, I'm a pro?
A little bit. I was still skint. That's the point.
How does that work then?
Again, still help from my mum and dad. Luckily, I got a sponsor at the time, and it basically paid enough for me expenses for the season. And the game was at a bit of a low point then. There was only 6 ranking tournaments a year. And if you didn't do anything in any of them, you were straight back off again because you only had a 1-year tour card as well. So right, the way it is now, you've got a 2-year tour card when you get on. Uh-huh. So you've got 2 years to give yourself a chance. Mm-hmm. You only had 1 year. If you didn't do anything in 6 tournaments, that was it. And I mean the tournaments, because there was only 6, they were spread apart.
You know, when you say doing anything in the tournaments, what do you mean? You don't have to win, do you?
No, there was 96 on the tour at the time, and you had to be in the top 64 to stay on.
Right, okay.
Failing that, you had to be on the top 8 of the 1-year ranking list. There's other pros who'd been on a good few years and the points were different. But if you had enough points in 1 year to be classed as outside the 64, but in the top 8 on the 1 year ranking list, you could still stay on the tour that way. Mm-hmm. I managed to do that first year, but I didn't win a lot of games. I only won a few games here and there.
And was the money shit?
Yeah, I mean, you can look on me earnings. There's a website, Q Tracker, and you can look on people's earnings,
right?
Like through the years. And I mean, I can't even remember, but I think it was something stupid like 1,200 quid, two and a half grand, something like that.
So like again, you're a pro snooker player, right?
Yeah.
You managed to stay on the tour after your first year. Mm-hmm. Are you considering employment still?
Well, that was what I did. So although I was pro, I think it was after a few tournaments. I mean, and as I say, they were so sparse. You'd lose in one, say, first round, and your next tournament was maybe like 2 months later. And right, what am I going to do in all this time in between? And this is when I say my mum was probably on my back going, well, you can't just play snooker, not earn anything, and then wait 2 months and keep practicing and then turn up to the next one and might win 1 or 2 games, get yourself $1,000, and then another 2 or 3 months until the next one. It was nonsense. So,
but you know what's mad? When you were like, right, I just want to turn pro, I want to prove a point. Like, it was me. It's your life working it, Gary. To be fair, you've getting there. Was it how you thought? Because like, surely you would have thought being a pro is a way of life. I didn't need to make money anywhere else now. But when you're 18-year-old, you've turned pro, you've said in the tune, you're like, I'm getting £1,200 a year. You're like, I'm skinned. Like, actually, it's not. Did you ever question the whole path that you'd taken?
You do a little bit. Obviously, if you're not winning straight away and you're struggling, you know the standard. You know how well you've got to play. For me, it was more I just wasn't competing to the standard that I know I could, and that was maybe a various number of reasons. It was pressure on myself. It was because there was so little amount of tournaments that you knew you had to win in that one because the next one was so far away, and if you didn't start winning quickly, you were in trouble. So there was a lot of pressure involved, and
it's the space in between, isn't it?
Like the tour's so different now, and I mean, as I say, the way it was then, it felt, every match felt like a very pressurised situation, and when you were on about work, that was when, halfway through the first season, even I was like, right, job time, and that's when I started working at the Village Hotel in the Silverlink,
right,
and it was just doing the functions, so Friday, Saturday nights, it started really just doing like the wedding functions and stuff, you know,
just
and
barman and
just doing bar work. Bar work, it was, just getting some.
Were you recognised as well? Were you recognised as a pro?
Not really, no, not then. Because I wasn't doing anything, I wasn't getting far enough in any tournaments. People who knew snooker knew who I was, but no one would have known that I was even a pro really or doing anything in the game. I'd never been on telly in obviously a tournament or anything. I'd never got that far.
So why would people know?
Why would people know us? Yeah. So it was like do the bar work, get some money in, get some pocket money in. I was still living with mum and dad, all that sort of stuff. So that's fine. Again, grateful to them. They were still helping us out and everything. I had a sponsor that helped us out with my expenses, but I had to have a bit of money for myself, and I had to just carry on. And I stayed on the first year. Second year, didn't have a great year neither. Dropped off. And then it's like, right, well, you're off now. It's another year at least until I can get back on. Again, where it's all changed now. You can get back on straight away if you qualify. But I had at least a year where I was off. And this point, I'm sort of 20-year-old, and I'm like, it's time to actually get a proper job or do more hours, you know. So yeah, and that just spiraled. That spiraled. I hoped I was going to get straight back on the tour again in a year or two at the most, and it took a lot longer than that. Yeah.
Is that when you jumped on the taxis?
So at first it was more hours at the Village instead of just Friday, Saturdays. It progressed into there's some shifts going in the pub. Like, they've obviously got a pub there, they've got the function bar. I was doing some shifts in the pub as well. So I was maybe doing 2, 3, 4 days a week sometimes in there.
Still playing snooker every day.
Still playing, still obviously dedicated to what I wanted to do deep down, but having to get some money for myself.
Did you doubt yourself? Honestly,
yes,
if you could look back,
yes, because I sort of said to myself, I've had 2 years there and I've done virtually nothing, you know. So it's a case of how much further can you keep doing it without getting anywhere?
Because for me, right, what the hardest thing for that is the fact that you know how good you are.
Yeah.
Even at that age, you're like, I've thumped these people, I've done this.
Yeah.
You probably did better than people who've gone on. Just right place, right time. They've managed to stay on the tour when you haven't, and bam, things change in the snooker world as well. So did that do anything to you mentally, or were you fine with that? Were you like, look, it is what it is. Like, I need to support myself. You know, I'm a man now. Like, this is the way it is. Or were you like, nah, I'm I'm pissed off. Like I want to.
It was all of that. Everything you're saying there is obviously you go through all them emotions. You're trying to work it out yourself. And the thing that kept me going was I hadn't performed anywhere near my best at any stage on the tour in them 2 years. Mm-hmm. Maybe the odd match, like literally maybe one or two matches I'd played pretty good. But generally I hadn't played anywhere near my best through, like I say, maybe whether it was nerves or the newness of it all, the pressure on myself, the fact there was so little tournaments. So I knew deep down I was good enough still. It's not like I'd played 2 years and I was playing to the best of my ability and I was still getting beaten. I was like, oh, what do I do now? It was like, I haven't even shown what I can do yet. Like, I'm waiting for the time to show what I can do, but it's getting the opportunities. So, yeah, I knew deep down it was still what I wanted to do. I knew I was capable of doing what I wanted to do, but I need the opportunity. But in the meantime, I've got to work.
So you're working, obviously, you're picking more shifts. So you're 2021?
2021, 22, yeah.
When did you manage to get back into the swing of things? When did you get back on the tour?
Back on the tour, yeah. So that was after doing bar work and working in a factory where my mum worked at Findus, and then taxis as well. It was during me fourth year of taxiing.
Though, working with your mum in the factory?
Oh, aye.
After all that, you're not going to make it, Gary.
That was the
point.
Not
that, but you know what I mean? Like a bit.
That was the point where I even considered myself, I'm just a working man now. I'm not a snooker player. It's what I would like to do. It's what I know deep down I'm good enough to do, given the opportunity. But I'm not that. I'm a working man, and if it comes and happens, it happens. But I'm not gonna expect it now, which was quite sad in a way. But like that was the reality of it, because I started working part-time there. That was when work was getting more and more. So I was working 6 till 10 in the morning, and that progressed to 6 till 2. So it was like full-time work. Snooker time. But it was good hours because I could still work. I could still play after that. 2 o'clock's obviously an early finish, and I could still play for a few hours after that and still have my own life. Started living with my mates. Moved out. Full-time work. I moved out, living with my mates. More like just normal working man now, And then still wanted to do the snooker. Still trying. Still playing in all the qualifiers. Not getting there. And that's when it went to right. Taxis is better because I don't have to do 6 till 2 every day. I can work whenever I want, and I can work as much as I want if I need more money.
So was it a tactical move? The taxis,
yeah, definitely, 100%. So I could be more self-employed and just work whenever I wanted. If there's tournaments, I know I can work around them. If there's ones that are more expensive and I need entry fees for, then I can work more hours to get that. I could just work how I needed to work.
Was anyone telling you specifically? Can you remember anyone saying, "Gary, just quit the snooker"?
Nah, no one would ever say quit because I was doing it in a way where I could do both.
Yeah, okay.
I was still working. I was working full time. So it wasn't like
you were just a bum?
No, because at that point I was working full time. So I was working full time, but every bit of money I had, obviously aside from doing things with your mates and stuff still, every bit of money I had was going back towards the snooker.
Did you ever want to, I wouldn't say a bum because that's definitely the wrong term. Did you ever want to just sack the work off and just commit fully? Because for me, I'd be thinking, I get it, I need to make money to live. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'd be thinking, if I'm going to have any chance here, I need to be given every hour to this, and I'm just not being optimal in achieving my dreams by being 6 till 2 in a factory. Did you ever think that?
Kind of, but not really, because I knew I was putting enough time in to once I got the opportunity in these main qualifiers to try and turn pro, I knew I'd be putting enough hours in to, if the game went my way, I would win. What I mean by that is obviously you can still play well sometimes and get beat because of a bit of luck.
Yeah, I
get
that.
I was playing well enough by doing enough hours to go, look, unless something silly happens here, I should be winning these games. And you don't need to be putting in... I personally didn't feel I needed to be putting in 6-8 hours every day just to be at a level to qualify to turn pro. I just needed a couple of hours every day, really.
So what age were you when you got back on the tour? Because I know that you were off the tour longer than what I thought, weren't you? It was about 7 years.
6 or 7 years, yeah.
6 or 7 years. And so that literally you were just on the taxis, you were a working man, you're playing snooker. Mm-hmm. What was it like when you got back on the tour after all them years? Did it feel the same it did when you first ever got on?
No, completely different.
What was it like then? What was your headspace at?
Everything was different. Probably more mature. Obviously, I was older. I'd had a lot more life experience, as I say, living away from home with my mates for a bit, taking care of all my own money and being a working man. I was probably about 8 to 10 grand in credit card bills because not only obviously just making me own, over the years it just accumulating because I was still paying for all my tournaments and getting in things I needed to get in. I was sort of at the point then where it was like, right, I'm back on, thank God for that. And the game had completely changed by then as well. Barry Hearn had came in about a year or two before me getting back on. And it had went from 6 tournaments a year to 20, 25 tournaments a year.
Is that harder because there's more snooker, or is it better because there's
much better?
Exactly.
Much better because there was just more opportunity. You didn't have as much pressure on every single match. Yeah. You were like, oh, well, if I get beaten this, I've got next week. There's another one round the corner, then another one round the corner, and you think,
is that good though?
For me, it is because I believe deep down I was good enough to do something. For me, it was just give us the opportunity and I'll do something eventually.
But would that not suggest that you don't handle pressure as well? Because obviously, if you're saying if there was less tournaments, there's more pressure.
Yeah.
You kind of have just said that you like the thought that there's an opportunity down the line. Now, does that show that you're not a fan of pressure?
I don't think so. I think you need to be given the right circumstances to deal with it. I think
that's fair enough.
I think I did have pressure on myself, and it did affect us. But at the same time, I was inexperienced. I wasn't used to playing on the pro conditions all the time. I'd never been to a TV stage really. I think in them first 2 years I was on, I'd only ever been to one proper venue, and that was the Preston Guildhall. I'd won a match in the Grand Prix, and I played Steve Davis then at the Guildhall.
Was that the first?
That was when I was like 19, 20-year-old, and it was the first time I'd played like a proper big player at a proper venue. And
how did that feel?
That was
by the way,
massively. I remember it now. It was like I was such a
because you'd have been a fanboy of him, wouldn't you?
Yeah, like I was just a complete spectator. Really, I lost 5-2, and even the table, the conditions, everything just felt so alien. Even though I'd played in the qualifiers and they were technically the same tables and stuff, just the lighting and just everything, the speed of the table was like so alien.
What was it like, sort of being in the same against someone who you'd watched on TV and that? As you were
it's a
struggling
bit,
in that and gone through your
It's a bit daunting, obviously, but I'm the kind of character that I just try and forget that and just play what's in front of us, play the balls on the table. I don't really think about that. And it was more a case that I just couldn't get to grips with conditions and stuff. It's hard to explain unless you've sort of done it, but it is so different playing on the TV tables to the qualifying tables and all that.
Because I think that's something, I know that, I mean, I've watched you on TV for a while, mate, and I've seen some of your interviews. I know you are, and obviously I've met you before, but the attitude that you've got, that it comes across, is you're not scared of anyone. Like you're not intimidated by anyone. I think you do need that, and I know you're as good as anyone. You can be number one. There's no reason why you couldn't. So obviously you're on the tour, and have you stayed in it since?
Yes.
Since you were 27.
27. So since I got back on in 2013, I've been consistently on.
And what's that like in terms of like financially? Did that change?
Massively, because there were so many more tournaments, and I started winning quite a few games quickly. After the first season, I was virtually in the top 64 straight away, which is a pretty good achievement. There's players struggling to do that generally. So,
and just for people watching and listening though, is it the top 64 that make decent money?
Yes.
Is it anything above that? Like, I know obviously you get, I mean, effectively every player is different depending on sponsorships, etc., but generally speaking, if you're a snooker player in the top 64, is there a good chance that you didn't really need to work?
Coincidentally, and just the way the game is, it's a proper cut off the 64. So rankings wise, you need to be in the top 64 to keep your tour card generally. Right. But also, it coincidentally works out that the way the money is in the game at the moment, that's around the level when you're looking at it over people's season or two's earnings. That's around the cut off as well. Where if you're below the 64. You're struggling financially, really. They're just, unfortunately, the way the game is, it's not. It's coming along. It's getting bigger, but it's not massive enough yet to sustain everybody on the tour to make a good living. It's if you're in the 64 and you're consistently in, even if you're 50-60, you're earning a living essentially.
So when you got into that 64 and you're buzzing and that, and obviously the financial strain's kind of being removed slightly from you, you're effectively getting paid to do what you love now.
Yeah.
Do you think, was there ever a point where you remember actually, fucking hell, like, I don't really need to stress about money now? Or is it something that it's always been in the back of your mind? Because you've said when you grew up, your mum and dad was skint, as you said. Like, is it something where, because it's very hard, from someone watching, I can watch and go, I mean, I know a bit about the sport, so I can say, right, I know he gets to that round, he's probably getting this for this now. How do you look at that as someone who's come up with not a lot of money? Because I know there's people who've had tables since they were bairns. And so how does that work for you?
I think I've still got that in my head now. People call us a bit tight at times, and I know deep down I'm not really a tight person with my money. I think it's because of what you've just said, that I've grown up so much with having to watch every penny, having to rely on my mum and dad to give us money, having to watch everything right through my 20s even, just to keep myself going. And it gets to a point where it's like I say, even now in life, I'm sort of, I'm doing well now, I'm doing all right. But even now, I'll still think about my money and think about because I'm sort of waiting for the day where I don't have it again. It's silly to say.
What was the turn? Was it this Junior semi-final cup? Was it a couple of years ago? No,
2019.
2019, so 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. Was that the point where, is that where you'd reached the highest financially?
Yeah, but I sort of didn't look at it that way. In the first year, when I got back on, I was doing quite well. And that I was still taxiing that first year. Mm-hmm. People don't realise, but I was still actually full-time taxiing during my first year as a pro, and I was still doing all right as well. And it wasn't until the February of that season, which was towards the very back end of that first season, that only then did I decide to chuck it in, because I felt I was financially secure now, where I could, not secure, but I knew I was doing well enough that something drastic's going to happen not to keep this up at least. Mm-hmm. So then I chucked it, and then in my second year, that's when I was full-time proper. It wasn't until my second year back on that I was full-time proper snooker playing. But yeah, as I say, even now, 10 years later, not really, but especially the first few years, I was doing decent, but I was always thinking, be careful, you don't know when you're not going to have any money again. And it was probably just ingrained in us. No, but the reason I'm smiling and sort of thinking about it is because I am still kind of like that in a sense. Deep down, I'm like, I might be doing really well at the moment, and there's plenty of money there. I don't have to worry at all. But you never know when it's not gonna be there. It's gonna end. Something could happen. It's kind of like thinking negatively in a way, but it's not. It's like I'm being too realistic.
Did it make you like the sport more when you start getting paid from it? I know that sounds mad. Or did it feel more like a job? Because I know that I can't remember who it was. But there was an experiment done, wasn't there, where they made Group A do an exercise unpaid, right, and they did really well. They did Group B, same exercise, paid, and they didn't do as well.
Right, okay.
And it's because normally when you attach money to it, people think it's more of a job and they don't want to push themselves as much, etc. Right. Is that something that happens with snooker? Because I can't imagine, like for me, I just like knocking a few balls about. If someone said, right, you're getting paid for this, you got to do well, you're like, it's a bit like, fucking hell, do I even want to play?
I think it's down to each person's individual personality. Yeah. Like, I'm the personality that doesn't, as much as we've talked money there and how deep down I've probably got them sort of issues of maybe keeping a hold of me money, I think the flip side of that is I don't actually care about it when I'm playing. I'm more of snooker ambitions mindset rather than.
Do you think there
money.
Is players out there who are money oriented?
Definitely,
like
definitely.
This is a business.
Yeah. I'm not going to name any, but there's a few I know that are more like, it's all about the money. It's all about if I win that round, if I win this number of rounds, if I do it. It's all about finance, and it is life's about that. I get it, but for me, it's not. I know when I go on the table, it's about I want to pop that ball because I want to prove how good I am, and I want to win this.
It's like the young boy inside you again, mate. The winner, like proving that point.
I play like that though, just for my own personal gratification. I want to play like I'm enjoying the playing side of it. I don't think of the money, and that's why when you were on about the World Championships a few years ago, I was doing all right, but I wasn't thinking about it's 50 grand for the quarters.
You know what? You can tell that though. I think with you, because I feel like, and I mean this with, like respectfully, I feel like sometimes you come across quite negative.
Yeah.
And it's like you beat yourself up, and I'm like, you played all right, yeah. Like I know I watched something not too long ago. I think that's when you beat Ronnie. And they said something like, you beat Ronnie, you're in a good position now today, and you were like, yeah, I know, but I've been in this position a million times. Like I've beat good players, but it doesn't mean I'm going to win the next one. For me, I'd be the opposite, because I think that's the way I think. I'm like, no, I'm going to fucking smash. I mean, that's probably different in snooker when you've got the pressure of the TV, the lights, the setup, you're at the cruise, but all that type of stuff. But for you, like I think you've kind of shown that now. If it was money, you wouldn't be as bothered, and I think that kind of comes across.
Yeah, it's all about my performance to me. Like I'm not naive in thinking that just because you've beat the greatest ever, it doesn't mean you are the greatest ever, or that you're going to be, or that you've been playing really well. I look at things. I think anyway, quite logically and quite realistically, and it does come across negative. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm trying to just be realistic. And I know when I played Ronnie in that game, he didn't play great. I didn't play great. It was just one of them games where we played 7 frames, and I won 4 and he won 3. It was very clear cut to me that I didn't play well. I just played good enough to win.
Does it still feel like when you're playing someone like Ronnie, does it still feel like I'm playing the greatest ever? Or is it just like, nah, it's me in the table and that's it?
You try to keep it just you in the table, but obviously it is Ronnie, and he's got that aura about him, and he is the greatest ever. It's simple as that. But I've played enough matches now over the last 10 years that I don't treat anybody like someone special anymore. There's not really them auras that there used to be.
Would you prep differently for a Ronnie than someone who's just got on the tour?
No, I mean, everybody's such a good player. Obviously, there's minute differences over a long period, consistency-wise and all that make the greatest, and the good players, But generally, the top 50 or 60 in the world can all play to a very, very high level. So you don't really prep differently in a game of snooker. I mean, it's one of them sports where you take your shot and then you might be sitting down and you might not get another one.
It's mad, because so I was at the qualifiers, as we were just saying off the podcast here, the other day, and some of the lads who were playing, again, not mentioning name stuff, but I thought, fucking hell, this is quite scrappy, this is a bit all over. They didn't look professional. That's the best way to put it. Respectfully, though, it just didn't seem like because I've never been to qualifiers before. Now, what I kept having to think, though, like, out of the millions of players from the world, these are the best about. You're not getting much better than the caliber here. So it's like, how different is it from qualifying or being in the club like this to actually being out there at the Crucible, under the lights, one table set up, etc.? Like, is there a massive difference, or is it just pressure? Or do you find that the actual, the match is a bit scrappier because of the pressure? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't like watching finals. I think they're a bit all out.
Like I said before, like when I first got to my first venue playing Steve Davis, it was a completely different experience. And you don't sort of start handling that properly until you've done it more and more and you get that experience, because it is different. For whatever reason, the tables, it's the lighting and all sorts. The tables just play that bit quicker, that bit slicker. It just looks different to you as a player. You've got the crowds and everything. It is totally different to the qualifying setups. Mm-hmm. As much as you are playing on the same tables, essentially, it's just not the same conditions at all. And it takes a number of times getting to venues in front of crowds to get a hold of that in yourself and start treating it. It's subconscious. It's to the point where you come out and you're just treating it like a normal game, and it's not like, because you get that the first few times, and it's not something you can help. You can't train yourself. You can't do anything about it. You've got to literally just do it a good few times to get used to it. It is completely different. But I found when I got to the Crucible, having already been at venues quite a bit, I'd been to a final, I'd been to semi-finals, I'd played in front of crowds quite a lot by then. Crucible then was like the next hurdle, and when I got there, within a few frames, I thought, this is a place I'm comfortable with. I really enjoy it here.
Because some people don't like it, do they?
And for whatever reason, some players hate it. Just it doesn't sit well with them. They just don't like it for whatever reason. But I'm one of them other players that actually loves it there. I love the environment. I love the closeness of the crowd and everything.
Going back to the financial side, did you ever treat yourself when you made a bit of money out of this?
Good question, that, because not really, no. I mean, as much as are you going back to when I was sort of in my 20s struggling? At any
point along your journey, like, because I know where you've came from, so it would be nice, because for me, I've always wanted a nice watch. Never had one.
Right.
And I've always thought, if I ever get to a certain point, now, some people might look and go, but Ads, you're doing well, why don't you? But for me, there's a certain goal I want to hit for me to reward myself. I think I've probably always struggled with actually treating myself to things.
I'm the same.
And I don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's being tight with money. I think it's more of a case of, what happens if it all goes tomorrow?
That's exactly what I was saying before.
Probably a bit of self-doubt, isn't it? Yeah. Like, ultimately.
It's not like self-doubt for me in that I'm not believing in what's going to happen. It's just exactly what you were picking up on there, though. It's like, you're just trying to be realistic and know that it can go at any time, and you're so used to battling for what you've got. Once you don't have to battle for it anymore, and it's coming good and it's coming naturally, it's hard to get rid of them demons to just say treat yourself and just get yourself, chuck away a bit of money and just treat yourself to something.
Have you done it?
Oh, every now and again. Like when I was younger, no, hardly ever. I wasn't ever really in a position to treat myself. I was getting cars as cheap as I could. I was living with me. Everything I could get and do, it was doing it as cheap as I could, and I was obviously struggling for money. But once I started doing all right, the only things I've started treating myself with really are, in the last few years, I got myself a brand new car when I was...
I've seen your car, it's nice, like...
But that's 6 year old now, and I've actually just treated myself the other week. I'm getting myself another brand new car, so I'm getting a BM. So the only thing I really treat myself with now is cars. It's the only thing I'm really bothered about.
Was cars something you looked at back in the day? Were you like, I'd love to have a nice car?
Oh, aye, yeah. When I was younger, I mean, growing up, I loved motorsport as well. I loved F1. I loved rallying, and even the bikes and that as well. I loved watching all that. So I was always into cars. It's just I never had the money to even think about getting a decent one. But now that I have, as I say, the last 6-7 years, I've treated myself to things like that. And I like, in my spare time, I like playing on the PlayStation and stuff and playing racing games. I've treated myself to like a rig, a proper setup with a steering wheel and pedals and like gear shifter and all that, because that's just a little hobby I like doing as well.
Chair and all that,
I haven't got the moving, but when you're talking about treating yourself, that might be something in the next couple of years I might be looking to maybe do. Yeah, get the motion chair and all that as well.
So since obviously the monies came and things like that, and your life's kind of changed, and you're committed, but obviously you've seen the money, and you don't have to really work again. You're pretty much secure. I know the doubts are always in the back of your mind, as we've said. Have you noticed many people that have changed around you since that's happened? Like, as people start to, when you said you had a housemate and like a flatmate and things like that,
yeah.
As people start to think, actually, like, whether it's your friendship, whether it's your family, as people sort of change a bit, like, oh, he's got money now, I might. Now I believe in him. You know what I mean? Has any of that happened? Like,
not really. I think for me, like my closest friends and my family, they've all been the same. They've all been there through it with us, and it's just they've progressed along with me. They've just started seeing what I knew deep down I was capable of, and they're just taking it the same as me. Like, just the progression's coming naturally, and it's just a case that I haven't really seen. I know what you mean. I haven't seen sort of anybody like completely change that way towards us or anything like that. I've got close friends and family because of who they are. Like, obviously you've got friends or acquaintances who aren't as close. They were your
friends anyway type
of thing. Yeah. The ones that aren't as close, who are just acquaintances really, yeah, you see a change in them. People who don't really speak to you as much, and then all of a sudden when you're doing all right, they're always trying to talk to you and that. You know who your friends are, essentially. It's one of them, isn't it?
I get that. Obviously, now where you're at, what's your thoughts of the sport in general from where you've been? Like, and obviously you've literally been a fan, a student, and someone who's in the sport.
Yeah.
What do you think of the game, the state of snooker right now?
It's healthy. It is healthy, but I think if I'm just speaking generally and quite to the point, more needs to be done. More needs to be done to get this game to the profile that, and it's me being biased, obviously, but I do believe it to the profile that it deserves. The viewing figures themselves speak volumes of what people who actually want to watch snooker. It's just, I think a lot of the time it's frustrating that they're not given the opportunity to watch it as much as they could, or to play it as much as they could.
Because I always feel like snooker's a bit of it's like on the back burner
yeah.
with all the rest of the sports. I mean, there's plenty of money in the game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Obviously, you're the best in the world, but I just feel like there should be more avenues, more sort of media around this. You should be able to sit down and watch podcasts with players and stuff. And I feel like there's not a lot of that. And again, it's something I'm really trying to achieve. If you could do something personally to the game, what would you do?
Oh, it's a big question.
If you could pick one thing that would change the game for the better, what do you think that needs to be seen more of? Or
I think just, and I don't mean this in any kind of personal way to anybody running the game, but it just needs, I just wish it was run like a really top-end sport. And that's just, I know it's very generalising, but just across the board, like everything. So when you go on the website, everything's accessible. If you want to watch any qualifier, any pro match, you can watch it, you can stream it, it's on TV. It should be all accessible. It's a top sport. Everybody in the world's watching it.
Yeah.
It's growing still. It's not stagnating really. It's still growing. We're going to be going back to China more than likely over the next season as well. In this day and age, though, you should be at a point where if you want to watch any pro match, you should just be able to watch it.
Yeah,
it should be easily accessible. Everything should be there for you.
Do you think there's a reason it's like that?
I just think
keep it a bit.
I just think personally, it
because it is like a gentleman's sport, isn't it? It's from old clubs and stuff, and
yeah,
you know what I mean. There's the kind of like. It's kind of underground, isn't it? Like old smoky clubs and things like that.
Used to be, didn't it?
Yeah, it did used to be. But do you think they're trying to keep it a bit? Do you think they're trying to keep that mystique about it?
I think I think World Snooker in general, who are running the game, they're trying to progress things, and they are, keeping up with the times and doing modern things. But there needs to be a lot more of that. I think, being totally honest, we could do with more people running the game, more staff, just more of everything, more investment, just to really push the game further forward. Barry came in and he pushed the game from one level to another. We need now that next jump. It's been about 10, 12 years now. And it is, although it's slowly, steadily progressing, we need that next jump. We need that next jump into like, right, we're going to push on to the next level now. We're not just a sport that some people know and a lot of people watch. We're now a sport that's up there properly. We're like football, tennis, golf, darts,
100%.
It's boxing. It should literally be there.
You're people who've dedicated your lives to this, effectively. Do you know what I mean?
The viewing figures, as I say, speak volumes. It is achievable. People want to watch. They just aren't given the ability to do so, and that comes into playing as well. The clubs need to be so much more accessible and attractive, where kids want to come in. Like I say, when I was growing up, there was junior like coaching sessions every week on a Saturday, and there'd be like 30, 40 kids in there. Sometimes you go to some clubs and you're lucky to get 5 or 10, and there just needs to be the interest. And I know it's the way times are going as well. Kids aren't really going out and doing things as much. They're staying in, playing on PlayStations and Xboxes a lot more, but you just need that bit more something to entice them to go in and and play, you know. And surely, like myself, from my story, surely watching it more on TV and being able to watch every game as much as you can, that's only going to help them go in. Yeah,
of course, exactly. That's absolutely mad. That it's something that I just don't know why it hasn't got to that stage yet. I mean, 2023.
Yeah, as you say, things like this, doing podcasts and all that sort of stuff, it's the way things are going, and it's what kids now are also going to be, they're on their iPads and all that all the time. They're going to be tuning in, and if stuff like this is on all the time, even on World Snooker's website, just putting on other people's podcasts and all sorts of things like that, people are going to tune in and they're going to get more interested, and it just needs a big push in all them areas. I know it's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, of course.
I wouldn't have the first clue how to start going about doing it, you know, but you just want it to be as interesting as like golf, snooker,
well, I'm gonna personally keep
football.
knocking and keep trying to knock them doors open, mate, because I do
it needs people like you.
I think that's a thing. I appreciate that, mate. When you say obviously the sport's growing, do you get recognised now?
Yes, yeah.
Because like again, with it being like it's not like a Ronaldo or a Messi.
Yeah.
Like how many people recognise snooker players? For you personally, is that a nice thing? Has it changed? Has it changed you? Is it mad getting spotted? Because obviously when you practice, like we're in the club now, it's very like kind of isolated, aren't you?
Yeah.
There might be a few people in here and that's it. It's not like going to a footy match, there's 50,000 people. And even in the Crucible cell, there's, I mean, I don't even know how many seats there is.
About 1,000.
1,000 seats. Yeah. So what's it like when you get spotted in public now? Is it like...
It's nice. It's a nice feeling, obviously. But I could take it or leave it as well at the same time. It is nice, but it's more over the last, probably ever since, to be honest, getting to the semis of the Crucible. Was it 4 years ago now? That was... Around that tournament, that was the first time I was starting to get noticed properly, where most times when I'd go out in like public with a lot of people around, there might be the odd person would recognise us and ask us for a photo or something, and that was the start of like, right,
nice that,
I'm getting noticed like by people in the area a lot more now. But then since then, over the last couple of years, like it's pretty much every time I go somewhere, someone will ask us like if they can have a photo or something. So it's nice, but yeah, it just means you're doing well, I suppose. And
do you get... Obviously, you see the likes of Jimmy White and that going on the jungle and all these type of things. Do you get other opportunities out of snooker?
Not as big as that.
Do you ever get any mad invites? Have you got any mad things where like, Gary, come to this, do this?
Not really just yet. I mean, I do obviously exhibitions and stuff, and I mean, you get some daft messages on social media that are completely out there. I don't know, like things you ignore, like, you know, will you come to me club in, I don't know, it could be Dover or something, and come to me house and... you're all right, mate. You know what I mean? I've got a table in my own house, and I'd love you to come down and players in a few frames. You can stay over, and you know, like I've delete. So
what happened the first time you did that?
I didn't.
No. So obviously along the way, you know, you've got your peaks and troughs and stuff, but with your journey, obviously, like I say, sometimes I've seen in certain interviews and stuff where you may come across slightly negative, and that's not me trying to say you're next, because I know you're not.
Yeah.
But because obviously it's a big self-belief thing, like the resilience that you must have, mate, to be off the... I don't think people understand and appreciate it. Like, I know it from a business point of view. I can't even imagine it in a professional realm where you competition is the nature of what you're making money from.
Yeah.
Like, How does that kind of fare with you? Like, what's that all about from a mental journey point of view? Like, do you ever have them dark days where you're like, even now, all the success in the world, I mean, do you ever feel like, like I kind of take this, like this is too much pressure, too much of everything?
I'm not a very emotional person. Anybody who knows as well knows I don't get emotional easy. I don't cry very much. Bad things happen. I kind of take it quite robotically. Mm-hmm. Snooker is one of the only things that's ever made me really cry.
Really?
Yeah, like...
What was a time when that's been?
Quite a few, and we're talking probably mainly through my 20s. Actually, when I'm a kid, when I've lost in junior tournaments, but you're a kid, you're expected to be really upset and cry. I mean, I lost in the under-15 semi-final when I was a kid and cried in the hotel room, but, I was like 11 at the time. But I'm talking in my 20s, a grown man, and I was crying because of snooker, thinking like, it's not going to happen. Why is this happening to me? I'm so bad.
Is that the competitive thing though, or is it snooker? Is it the love for the game?
It's both. It's the love for it, and it's knowing that what you're capable of, and you're not able to do it, and you're constantly underachieving. You're letting yourself down. You just, as I say, I'm not a very emotional person, but it's one of the only things that's ever hurt me so much to like make us over a number of times want to just quit, and I mean it as well. I've told myself I've put my cue away. I'm not playing this game ever again.
Can you actually tell us, like, that is crazy that mate. Can you actually tell us a time when you've actually been at your worst? Can you? Because obviously you must be able to remember, like, like how you felt. Where were you? Like,
yeah.
Can you give us that time when you've been at a really all-time low?
One of them was the second year of me first 2 years as a pro, and I'd lost in the World Championship qualifying match, which was the last tournament of the season, and I knew I had to win that qualifying game to potentially stay pro, or if I lost, I was definitely off the tour. And I lost that game 10-8. It was 8 apiece, and the lad has made two flukes in the last 2 frames, both of which were frame ball. Oh. And it was a scrappy game anyway all the way through. I was terrible. And I remember after losing after that, knowing I was off the tour. Them 2 years had basically been a waste of time. I had to wait at least another year to get back on. And obviously, from what I was saying before, had no money, skint, had nothing to fall back on. I was the lowest of the low then. That was one of the times where I was like distraught. I was probably crying and all sorts, and like thinking, what am I going to do with my life here? Like, literally, what am I going to do? Yeah.
What's the thoughts like when you're actually sitting down at the table? When someone's up and whoever you've got on, and you ever, what's going through your mind? Is it literally the next shot, or is it like, I know that sounds mad. Well, if I win this, I can go to the Maldives. Are you like, do you know what I mean? Like, I know that sounds mad, right? Because I know you don't think about the money.
Yeah.
But do you ever think like, actually, this is like an opportunity for me life and me family here? You haven't got kids yet, have you?
No.
Do you want kids or not? Are you not?
I don't think we're going to have kids, to be honest. No. So. Yeah,
but even for you and your wife, like, does any of that come into it where you're like, the more I win it, like if I win this game, me and my wife are gonna have a kind of good life here, like.
Again, not that I ever thought about the money really, but you do naturally when you're coming through then and you haven't got any, you do, and that does put a bit of pressure on the game, knowing that this game's for $5,000 and you're skint. Of course, it puts a little bit of pressure on it, and that's probably a little bit of the reason why maybe I did miss the odd ball in some matches back then, where that would have won us the game, and instead I've lost the game. But when you get beat in them circumstances, like I say, where it's not just for money in that World Championship, it's for your tour card, it's for your life essentially, like your way of living. And he flukes the ball, and you're sitting in your chair, and you're saying, what do you think when you're sitting in your chair? When he's fluking them 2 balls to win each frame, you're just sitting there suicidal. You're suicidal. You're literally like, you're ruining my life here. Like, what's going on? Like, God, it's nuts. And obviously, I know there's much worse things going on in the world. But to you as a sportsman, and I've said this to other people, and only people who do it kind of understand it, you don't understand how bad a feeling it is. Even though there is worse things going on in the world, we get that. But to you yourself personally, as a sportsman, being a competitive person like that, and it's your life, your way of living, your money that you're earning if you win or lose, it's the worst thing in the world that can happen to you. Like, it's horrible.
Do you get angry and all? Do you ever
get yes. I mean, there's times I've chucked my cue across the hotel room. I've put it in the bin. Me dad had to go back and pick me cue out the bin at the World Championships in Sheffield in the qualifiers. We've just been. It was the same venue. In fact, it might have been Ponds Forge around the corner.
Okay.
This was only a few years ago, and I mean, this is when I'm doing all right money wise. I'm sustaining a living, but because again, it's not about the money. It's about your own ambitions and what you're achieving and what you're chucking away. I must have chucked away tens of thousands, hundreds of £1,000s on games before, just missing the odd ball. And I came out the qualifiers having lost a game. I can't remember who it was. The cue went in the bin. It literally went in the case, through the slot, in the bin, just sat there in the bin, and I walked away. And me dad and Robin, my missus, they were like, oh, he's going to go back for it. I was not going back for it. I just walked away. My dad had to go back and pick it out of the bin for us.
You've got to, when you're actually in the game, so never mind up to that point, you can't let them say that you're pissed off, really, can you? Because
not in the game.
It is a mind game as well.
A little bit, and I'm always one that's I do show me emotions a little bit. I'm not a firm believer that every bit of showing emotion necessarily makes your opponent pick up on it and play better. I think sometimes it can have the adverse effect. It can put them under it a bit and go, oh, hang on a minute, I better make the most of this chance because he's fuming at the minute. And if I don't, he might get back into it. So sometimes I think it can have an adverse effect where it actually puts them under a bit more pressure, them seeing you upset about something, Yeah.
Do you have any kind of routine or anything when you're going into a game?
In terms of what, like preparation and stuff?
Preparation or anything like that? Do you have like a mind coach or like someone who can work with you on that side?
Not really, no. I know that as long as I'm comfortable with how I'm playing, if that comes out on the table, on the match table, and I feel comfortable, generally all the other sides of us come together, like the concentration, the keeping a hold of my emotions. I can keep a very blank face if I want to. I just choose not to.
So what do you think of the players who do have coaches with them?
Then if it works for them, great. I've tried in the past. I've dabbled with all sorts, obviously struggling for a lot of years as well. I've dabbled with speaking to mind coaches and, psychology side of things and all that. I've dabbled with it all, but a lot of it never really did anything for us. I never really took anything from it. And it just, for whatever reason, maybe it's a bit like hypnotism. And I've even tried that one session.
Really?
It's not something that works for me. Other people have sworn that they fell asleep when they've been hypnotized and stuff. I'm just sitting there bored, like falling asleep. Just thinking this is not for me. Like it's not resonating with me whatsoever.
I know this is a mad one, mate, but is there a diet? Like, I know this sounds crazy, right? Because even when I watch snooker, I always think when the players are going off the intervals, like some sessions going into the night and that, and I'm thinking like, are you not starving here? Like, because that's got to play. Because when I'm starving, I'm just not a nice person to be one, right?
You've got to prepare properly. Obviously, snooker's not the most physical sport, but you've got to be mentally well. And obviously, they say if you're mentally fit, you're physically fit.
But typically, you're not going to go and have a carvery before you play, are you? So
no,
typically, like, what does Gary Wilson eat? Is it like a sarnie at the interval? Is it something beforehand? Is it?
You just eat sensible. You just as you say, you don't go fill yourself full of a Sunday dinner just before you go on to play because you're going to feel groggy. You're going to feel like you want to lie down, but you just eat sensibly. And there is players who take that to the next level as well. You've got players who are on smoothies and all sorts, and they'll take bananas out with them. And I do that sometimes. I'll have a banana beforehand. It's just to keep your energy levels up, really. That's all. But
I've noticed the banana.
Some take it to the nth degree. Some aren't as bothered about fitness and diet and stuff. But it can only help, obviously, if you keep yourself relatively fit. You're going to be mentally fit. You're going to be prepared for long matches, as you say. You're going to be able to sustain them levels of concentration for long periods of time. And if you're not going to be as good in them situations. You're probably going to get a bit tired, and you're going to miss the odd ball because of it. So, and it's longevity as well. As long as you keep yourself reasonably physically fit, you're going to be able to play this game, as has been proved the last number of years now, well into your late 40s. There's players in their late 40s doing really well still at the top of the game, so there's no reason why any player can't play till they're 50 really now.
So Gary, obviously, like with business, a lot of people say to succeed, you've got to be kind of delusional. Snooker's very much the same because it's a sport where very limited chance of you succeeding. It's not like football where you can be at a low level and still get paid well.
Yeah.
Would you recommend snooker?
I shouldn't say this, but being totally honest, the state the game is in at the moment, which is healthy, it's good, you still have to be very, very good to be earning a good living. So my personal thing would be, like, if you love it and you've got talent and you think you can do well, like I believed when I was younger, go for it. But if you think, look, I'm maybe not the best of players, but I'm going to dedicate everything I've got and I'm going to get there eventually, if you don't, or even if you do and you get somewhere near and you're sort of top 64 in the world, you're only going to be barely making a living at the moment. So unless the game gets a lot better, like the levels of sort of tennis, golf, football and all that, I couldn't hand on heart recommend it to people unless they loved it. Aye.
Gary, thanks a lot for your time, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish I could ask you so much more. I really do, mate.
Anytime, mate. We'll do another.
There's definitely going to be another one. You're just along the road, so Sam, mate. But thank you so much for your time, mate.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks a lot, mate.
Thank you, mate.
Thanks.
Cheers.